It's time for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group with financial advisors Kevin Korhorn, Mike Bernard, and Josh Gregory.
Welcome to another episode of the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group, where every week we're helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. Thanks for being with us. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm your host. I'm also one of the certified financial planners on the show. Here with me, as always, in the KFG studios, my business partners and friends, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory.
Yeah, financial planning when you're single is different than it is for a married couple. So what areas are more important and what areas might be less important or could you pay less attention to? And what are some of the common mistakes that single people make in their financial life that you need to stay clear of? So that and questions from the fans of the show coming up in this hour of Wise Money.
That's right. We got a great question about long-term care insurance and taxes. We're going to hit. It's a little confusing, so we'll get to that in the second half of the program. If you have a question, you can reach out to us a few different ways. Find us online, wisemoneyradio.com, and you can submit a question right there on the right. You can call or text, and honestly, I know you'd rather text it, 574-222-2000. That's 574-222-2000. And then all over social media, wherever you're at, we're there too. Just search Wise Money Show, and you can submit questions there on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the YouTube channel, of course. Again, search the Wise Money Show. All right, we are wrapping up our series today on being suddenly single and how that impacts your financial planning. Each episode has been about the difference in financial planning strategies and concepts when you're single, either after the death of your spouse or after going through a divorce. Today is another look at the difference in financial planning when you're single, but it's not tied to an event like that. It's actually just how is financial planning different when you're a single individual, whether you're not married yet or really never plan to be.
Yeah. So it's very interesting as we work with people who are single because it's a very different dynamic than when you're married. So when you're single, the stakes are much higher. A lot of times for married people, if something happens, if there's just one person working outside the home, the other person can go to work, pick up jobs over Christmas time at the mall, or drive for Uber, or fill in the blank. So there's somewhat of a backstop or a cushion if you've got two income earners in the household. So we have seen... So we are very biased. We believe everyone should work with a financial planner, and we believe that financial planner should be certified. But if you said, well, who needs it most? Who needs financial planning more than anyone else? I would say it's the single person. Not so much that they need financial planning, but they need a coach. They need a trusted advisor that they can go to for financial wisdom because this may resonate with you. I found this true with myself. I personally can justify anything. Anything that...
Yes, you can.
I've heard you
yes,
try
you can, Kevin.
Some real doozies, actually.
Yes. I'm the head of the justification department.
Remember that time you said we should have a radio show? Boy, that's
what
crazy.
Was I thinking? So the challenge is that you can being by yourself, any idea in a vacuum makes sense. So you say, well, I should do this. Well, maybe that's a good idea, but maybe it isn't. And maybe you find yourself playing checkers in the cosmic game of chess. Mm. So you should be looking 3 moves ahead on the board instead of just what's the next move. And so I have one of my favorite stories. After doing this for 25 plus years, one of my favorite stories is a client who was single, and this person came to me in 1994 with about $45,000 to their name. And they said, hey, I would like to retire at the age of 50, and that was about 20 years away. Mm-hmm. And I looked and said, that is a very ambitious, very aggressive goal. If you're committed and you're willing to sacrifice certain things along the way, it's doable, though. Do you want to do it? And this person said, yes, I do. And this person had a decent income, not incredible, but a good income. And 20 years later, they had well north of $1 million, and we're in a position to retire.
Wow.
And stayed single that entire time as well?
Stayed single the entire time.
That's
So
amazing.
it is amazing. And I think about this because I just met with another client who was in a similar situation, who I've worked with for 20 plus years, who was in the school system. And this person didn't do a lot of the traditional things that people say, well, you need to do these things in order to, live the American dream. You need to do these things in order to, in some ways, accumulate wealth. And this person didn't do these things, and yet they've positioned themselves. And again, as a financial planner, I don't take credit because I didn't do the heavy lifting. I didn't do the hard work. I didn't run the miles. But having the opportunity to serve these people and to coach them along the way, and so when they bring a question or a problem to me, I see that problem in the context of the rest of their financial life.
Sure.
And it is more difficult for them to do, but of course it is because they don't do it all day, every day.
Yeah, and that's true of everybody, right? Anyone seeking financial advice, it's because hopefully their financial planner is bringing something to the table that they maybe wouldn't be able to pull off on their own. But those are fun stories when it's someone who on their own, it wasn't a team effort. They had to make all the sacrifices on their own. You kind of alluded to how the stakes are higher when you're individual.
Absolutely.
You're not married, mostly because you don't have the ability to fall back on that spouse. And to me, I've had the pleasure of kind of being almost an accountability partner as much as an advisor to a single individual. I started working with Tom when he was 21, I was 22. So we're coming up on 2 decades of knowing each other. But it's fun because he came right out of the gate with an aggressive goal, wanted to be able to retire early. And he started doing the work to put himself in that position. Mm-hmm. And it's fun because even though Tom has stayed single, we've seen other examples of someone who gets a great start and it puts them in a position where the family foundation is laid really well so that if they do become married at some point, they're just light years ahead of maybe where their peers would be just because they made the sacrifices during the single years instead of living it up, living some great bachelor life or something like that.
Yeah, I've seen examples of both. And when you're prepared, when you've laid that foundation, you can make great strides financially. So let's talk about that then. When you're single, what are some of the most important areas in your financial life to focus on to get that head start, whether you're going to be married sometime in the future or not?
Yeah, and I would want to kind of back up for just a second and say, when you're single, what is crucial is developing skills to help you manage your financial life. And so I say one of those skills is writing a check to your financial coach. Because Joshua was talking about accountability, and a lot of times when people hear this idea of an accountability partner, they're like, well, no, I don't want to be told what to do. But when we talk about accountability, we're just holding people accountable to what they've said they want to accomplish.
Exactly. Yep.
So it's in kind of a cheerleading, encouraging type of an approach, and to say, hey, remember how you said this was important? Is it still important?
Yeah.
Because what you're doing now is going to get you off course for that. And sometimes people say, I'm fine going off course.
Well, it's the chief reminding officer, right? Reminding them of what they said was most important once upon a time, but also reminding them of those great disciplines and habits that they need to make sure they never lose sight of because the stakes are higher. Things like having a budget and making sure you know where every dollar goes, making sure that you're maintaining adequate emergency funds. Because, again, it's you and your resources to fall back on, not you and your spouse and the accumulated resources together.
Yeah, I have found that folks that are single, either before marriage or don't have any plans to get married, are I don't know if you guys would see this, but very, very receptive to advice and very much more coachable. And I think it might be because they don't have someone to spar ideas off of and to share ideas and so on. And so they're really seeking that type of wisdom. So what areas in your financial life are more important when you're single? What areas maybe are less important? And what are the big mistakes that you want to avoid? All that and more coming up here on The Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. All right. YouTube, thanks for listening. This is The Wise Money Show, of course. If you're a subscriber, great. Feel free to leave a comment below, leave a question below. That would really help us out. We'll get back to any comments, any questions that you have. We commit that to you. If you're not a subscriber, I'd encourage you to hit that button right down there below, and also hit that bell to be notified of any future videos. We are doing more and more videos, pushing more and more content out there. The vlog, the Next Wise Step vlog is coming as well, so make sure you hit that button. All right, so guys, before you were married, what sort of things did you do in your financial life to either get a head start or to realize, I actually should have done cleaned some of these things up before I was married?
That's an interesting question. I didn't have a ton of time between
No, you
college, right? I had a year. I graduated from college a year ahead of Andrea. And during that year, I would call that the investment phase in my career. Obviously, it's gone much longer than that, but that was all I was focused on. It was studying, learning, getting credentialed, trying to establish credibility and competence, because I believed that my ability to contribute to the family's finances was all driven by how well I can perform in my role at work, ultimately.
Investing in your human capital.
That's right.
Your earning potential.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Kevin, what was there a big gap between graduation and you and Lori getting married? I don't remember.
It seemed like forever. It was, I think, maybe 4 or 5 months. Because she actually graduated in January of '93. I graduated in May of '93, and I graduated May 8th, and I proposed May 7th. And I proposed that we get married May 9th. So anyway, that
Don't even think about it, Lori. Just say yes and let's do this.
before you change your mind.
Yeah.
So we got married in October, but somehow financial stuff just made sense to me from the time I was young, and a couple things came together. I'd always wanted to join the Army since I was a little kid, and my dad had told me since I was a little kid, look, you're going to college, so you're going to make your living with your mind and not your back. And so I just kind of had that drilled into my head. As much as I didn't really like school, and I felt like it always was getting in the way of my education, I just said, okay, I know I'm going to have to do school. But after 13 years of school, I didn't want to do more of it. And when I told my dad I want to go in the Army, he said, well, don't go in the Army. And I said, well, look, I can enlist for 2 years and get $17,000 for college. There's no other place I can go and save that much money.
YouTube, we're actually going to be talking about that next week as well. So make sure, again, be subscribed and hit that notifications, because we're going to have that. We're going to have more on that, especially Kevin's story next week.
And thankfully, so I went to Central Michigan University after I got out of the Army, and I used the GI Bill to pay my whole way through. And I got out of school without any debt whatsoever. I paid my whole way. That was, if you look back at the inflation on college costs, that was many times easier to do in 1993 than it would be for someone today.
However, because we got to kickstart the next segment here, but where you're going is that was a sacrifice that you made to get ready financially for you and Lori starting your life together.
Yeah,
you made
with
it.
no debt.
You had no really idea, and you probably weren't thinking about that at the time. But when you're starting your life, you're trying to, buy a house and get a car and do all these other things that it takes to launch yourself. And you made some decisions early on that you'd be able to do that without the burden of student loans. So kudos. That's fabulous. All right, we're going to talk about more of that next week. We're talking about the student loan crisis and then the proposal to solve it, which is free college. Interesting. So we'll talk about both of those next week. Okay, so we'll weave in any financial planning is different for single. Let's just weave that into these couple areas just because we're a little tighter on time.
Yep.
So we'll start with what are the most important areas in someone's financial life when they're single, and we can weave in any stuff that you had prepared about how it's different. Sound good? Kevin, you making faces? That's for your viewing pleasure there, YouTube.
I'm just adjusting my cup.
Coffee cup.
Certainly.
Okay.
Although
I don't know.
although this is an environment where you never
Okay.
know
That's right.
what kind of
Kick
protection
into
you
the
may
table
need.
there.
There you go.
Oh goodness! I wonder. So when I laugh, I cry, and I don't know if these high def cameras pick that up.
You do look a little teary this morning.
Yeah. Well, we've been laughing. We were joking before. They had a little comedy session here before we started the show. All right. Ready? When you are single, how is your financial planning different than if you were married? Whether you plan to get married someday or really never have that intention, what are the most important areas of your financial life that you need to focus on to either lay that foundation or to consistently make progress? That's what we're talking about today. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being with us. My name is Mike Bernard. Here with me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. For all the Wise Money content, you can find us online, wisemoneyradio.com. And then wherever you're at in social media, we're there too. Just search the Wise Money Show, and you can submit questions there, and you can catch up on all the content that we're pushing out here from the Wise Money Show. All right. When you're single, what are the most important areas in your financial life that you need to focus on? You guys know that there's 6 areas to everyone's financial life. When you're single, are there some of those that take center stage?
That's interesting. I'm curious to hear your answers on this one. If I was throwing my votes out there,
Can I just real quick, I just want to run through.
are you interrupting?
Yeah.
Okay.
The 6 areas, because people are saying, well, what are the 6 areas of financial planning? So do you want to?
Go for it.
Okay, so present financial position, protection planning, tax planning, investment planning, retirement planning, estate planning. Joshy?
Okay, so of those 6, which ones are most important, I think is your question,
Yeah.
right?
I've got the answer.
I say the first 2 that you mentioned, present financial position and protection planning.
Oh, that's
Ooh.
interesting because protection planning is very different when
sure.
you're single
Yeah.
Right.
versus when you're married.
And you're half right, so keep going.
I knew there was going to be a comment coming. I see these 2 areas as foundational. If you can get these right, get your balance sheet cleaned up. I think if you are single, it's very important for you to have liquid, accessible cash on hand. And one of the first things you should build into your financial life, some people would say a first baby step is $1,000. That's a little generic. I think it actually needs to be at least a paycheck of yours. Many people live paycheck to paycheck, and you need to get some distance between you and financial crisis. So make sure that you've always got at least the equivalent of a paycheck on hand in an emergency fund. This is not a full emergency fund. It's just a start.
Yeah, that's the minimum.
That's right. And then, another very important habit we were talking about previously, getting a budget in place. It's really important that, you have discipline and some sort of a game plan on cash flow, because it is so easy, especially when there's no one who's directly holding you accountable on that cash flow. You could start spending money on things that are less important, and that erodes your ability to reach your most important goals.
When you're married, I've just seen this over nearly 2 decades of serving folks. When you're married, usually there's one spouse who has an affinity towards managing the cash flow and maybe is good at it or likes writing the bills and tracking all that stuff. And oftentimes there's one that doesn't. Sometimes neither do. But, but when you're single, you don't have that. You don't have that at your disposal to say, well, I'm good in these areas, but I'm weaker in these, and maybe having a partner who is a good complement for you. And so there's no excuse. You've got to be good at cash flow management. If not, you've got to get your financial planner on the line and in your corner immediately before you start getting backwards so that you can build the right habits, build that right foundation.
Yeah, and even if you are good at it, you still need to get your financial
of course.
coach on the line, because you want to identify what are the skills, what are the habits that I need to build. And I would somewhat disagree with Josh, although I like your answer. I think your present financial position is the first one because that's the one that's going to put you in a position to have some sort of peace and some sort of confidence to be able to operate. And then you can use your energy. The folks that I've seen that have been single their whole life and accomplished incredible things financially, it was a series of good decisions. And at every turn, they made a good decision, good decision, good decision, good decision, good decision. So it wasn't this, hey, I woke up one day and I was incredibly successful. It's, no, I was a grinder. And I just kept, at every opportunity, I made the right decision.
Guys, there's never the story of I woke up and I was successful. That's never the case. Any athlete that you watch and say, I wish I could do that, will tell you the same thing. And you only know your financial life. You don't see anyone else's. We see tons. No one wakes up the next day and is all of a sudden successful. It comes from the habits. It comes from the daily grind.
So I think are we in agreement that the first and most important area is your present financial position?
I think so.
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Where do we diverge?
So I would say the second area is tax planning, because if you can get your present financial position correct, so you've given every dollar a name, you're tracking your spending, you're managing your liabilities, you're also tracking your net worth, which again, that is a great confidence booster and a discipline that some of the most wealthy clients I've ever worked with could show me their net worth back to age 21. So you say, well, I don't really want to. Yeah, do that. Do that. It will help you more than you can imagine. But the next area is tax planning and not tax preparation. Because a lot of times when I'll sit down with folks and I'll say, hey, who does your tax planning? And they say, so-and-so does my taxes. I'm like, that's cool. That's tax preparation. But I'm talking tax planning. Who has shown you what the opportunities are that you need to be taking advantage of so that not only today, but over your lifetime, you'll pay as much as you can in taxes in the lowest possible bracket. And if you're single and have a decent income, you're in the higher brackets fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You're exactly right. Okay, so when I said protection planning, did your mind go to life insurance or home and auto insurance? Where did it go?
You know where it went.
Where?
Disability.
Okay, good. So why would you say that's not more important?
It's because it's not my answer.
That's the honesty I was looking for. Thank you.
I thought health insurance first. Because if you have when you're married, if you're both working and one of the spouses doesn't have retirement or a health insurance plan through work, then hopefully the other one does. Or one offers a plan that maybe you don't really like or it's expensive, then you can choose the other person's. No, when you're single, it's just up to you for health insurance. But
it is, and many people want to roll the dice and just go without health insurance.
I heard that story this week. Someone who had an appendix removed when they had rolled the dice.
Wow.
No insurance.
That's not cheap, right?
Yeah.
You know, what is it? The number one cause of bankruptcy is a health-related expense that pops up, and usually it's because you didn't have health insurance as a catastrophic backdrop, so to speak. You know, a safety net for you. But disability is a big one. You know, if I became disabled today, I know that my wife has, you know, skills that she could go earn a living and the family's not going to starve. But I also know that I have protection in place to help provide an income if I can't go earn it. And when you don't have the spouse to fall back on, maybe you're still building up an emergency fund. There's no emergency fund out there, by the way, that can fully cover this risk of a disability. Because you could be disabled the rest of your life. And most emergency funds that we would encourage you to build are 6 months worth of your living expenses if you're a single individual. So emergency fund and strong balance sheet isn't enough to really put you in a position where you've got a foundation, you know you can go focus on building for the future because you've got a defense in place, a protection.
Yeah, so over the course of your career, you're 3.5 times more likely to be injured and need disability coverage than you are to die and need life insurance. And if you're single, I would look at, do I really need life insurance? Do I need life insurance to pay my student loans off at my death? Most student loans have what's I would call a death put, which is they're forgiven at your death. So I believe that disability insurance is the most important. I was in a professional office this past week, and the doctors were talking about how some had disability insurance, individual policies, some didn't. Some had great ones that they'd gotten back when they were in school. And so the cheapest way to buy disability insurance is in a group plan, but there are some issues that come up with that as well. So I would say if you need to protect your income, get disability insurance, especially if you're single.
Especially if you're single, because you've got to protect your income. That's it. Okay. So, all right. So, what are the big mistakes that folks that are single, either before marriage or just because they never plan to get married? What are some of the financial mistakes that we see them make that hopefully we can help you avoid? So, that and more coming up here on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. All right. Before you were married, biggest financial mistake. When you're single, biggest financial mistake.
I got mine.
What you got, Josh?
I didn't take care of my car. My very first car, paid $1,500 for a Chrysler LeBaron where the paint was chipping off. It was terrible. 2-door rocket, though. This thing was fast. I love that car. It turns out, though, you have to keep oil in the car.
What?
I know. It's crazy. These things don't just take care of themselves. But, yeah, when I was in college, the thing just, I blew the engine on a car that still had plenty of life left in it. It could have taken me all the way through college, and I could have been still driving a jalopy even at the beginning of my career. But unfortunately, it died, and shame on me. That was a mistake. Because I had to go get another vehicle, and I don't know. I mean, I was able to do it, but that money could have been used better. So it's not just can you buy the car. This is what I tell my kids. You have to be able to buy the car and maintain the car and insure the car, take care of that thing. It'll take care of you.
Yeah, I just went over that with my son Joshua, how it's $300 a month to have a car for him. But it's not really, because there's $100 and change for insurance, and then there is any vehicle that you own, you need to be setting aside $100 a month for maintenance, because if you don't, the thing will come that you don't have the money for.
Yeah, maintenance doesn't happen $100 a month at a time. It happens.
So you got to be setting aside $100 a month, and then
Especially if you don't put oil in it, Josh.
I was saving a lot of money on oil changes, though.
and you want to put gas in it. And so so think $300 a month, and then I told him, and oh, by the way, you need to think another $300 a month to replace that car. So it's about $600 a month to be a driver, and that, I think it kind of hurt his feelings a little bit.
Yeah.
And life has a way of doing that, right? Reality smells horribly.
I can just hear people turning off YouTube right now. After you said that, you just hear it click.
I know. Well, but
It's terribly unpopular.
But if your toughest leadership challenge is to lead yourself well. A leader's job is to define reality. If you define reality like that, and you say, "Okay, I have to do this, and I'm doing this," that lets me know what kind of job do I need to have.
Well, exactly, and you change your approach if that happens, right?
And how much money do I have to go to a concert or
exactly
to do these other things?
Yeah. All right. Well, let's transition.
Did you not make any mistakes?
No.
You're just not willing to disclose. I
No,
like
we
how
gotta-
you baited us into.
I'm curious about you.
Did you hear mine?
Yeah.
We gotta start the next segment. We're
Apparently,
starting.
all that advice that you gave to Joshua came from hard learning, right?
No.
Well, we'll pick it back up in the. This is start of third segment in the last break. We'll pick it back up for those of you on YouTube. There you go. Okay. Very quickly, let's touch on we need to make the comment. Every area of your financial life is important, regardless of what stage of life you're in. I think there's one obvious one that maybe isn't a top priority when you're single. We can touch on that. It's still important, but critically important. We'll get into that. and then quickly mistakes. So I'd like to get to your rant in this
Yeah,
segment, this
good.
third segment. Okay.
Let's rant.
So. All right, you ready, Lindsay? Kevin walked in the studio this morning and told me, hey, I've got a rant. And that is on deck for us today. This is the Wise Money Show. Thanks for being with us. My name's Mike Bernard, here with me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Listen, just to remind you, if you're not listening on the YouTube channel, we've got every episode of the Wise Money Show right there on YouTube. Just search the Wise Money Show. We've got that as well as the vlog and other video, other content. So make sure you check us out there and subscribe to it and hit that bell for notifications as well. Okay, today we're finishing up our series on being suddenly single and how that changes your financial planning, the approach that you need to take. Now, we were just talking about what are the most important areas of those 6 when you're single that you really need to focus on. We all agreed that present financial position, that's the foundation. When you're single, it's on you financially. So you've got to have a stable foundation. And then protection planning, tax planning, they're all important, truthfully. And of course, so if you're saving up money, it's got to be invested well. You don't want at 21 to start saving and have that good habit and have it all going into a guaranteed account, right? So making sure you're managing your investment risk, planning for retirement, the long term, of course, that's important. If I were to put one that's least important, you might want to say estate planning. But there's a trap there. And the reason why I say that is most people think estate planning, they think will. And I've got to have a guardian for my kids, and I need to direct who gets this money when something happens to me, and I've got to make sure my estate is big enough because other people are depending on me. Well, when you're single or not yet married, it's not as important. Where I'd argue with myself on that is with medical directives, advanced directives.
Yep.
So, Josh, can you explain that real quick and why
Well,
that's important?
Yeah, I mean, you're referring to this risk that if you get conked on the head and you can't make financial or medical decisions for yourself, you have to be able to designate someone who you do authorize to do that, someone that you trust to step in and do the decision making for you if you are not able to. And the way you do that is by drafting a power of attorney or the appointment of a healthcare representative. These are 2 separate documents. An attorney can help you do that. And it's part of a basic estate plan that we recommend for everybody, which also does include the last will and testament that you were referring to. But often, and this isn't true for everybody, some people are single for their entire life, right? And so they could be 60 years old and have accumulated fantastic wealth that's very complex, and maybe having an important estate plan in place, a robust estate plan can be really crucial. But most crucial at all ages is having that power of attorney and the healthcare representative in place. You got to have your backup plan and authorize. It could be a parent, could be a sibling, a very close, trusted friend, but someone who you're giving permission to step in on your behalf.
That's right. Make sure, once again, even if you're single, not married yet, you've got to have your financial coach there to talk to you about these things, because you could listen to Josh and say, that's just fear-mongering, never happens. No, we see it all the time. That stuff happens. And when you're single, you're not thinking about those sorts of things. I'm sure you're not. So you've got to have your financial coach in your corner who's thinking about those sorts of things so you don't have to, and so that you make sure you're prepared.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake a single person could make is not having a financial plan for their financial life. But there are other quick mistakes that I would want you to think about. Playing the comparison game is a huge mistake, and saying, hey, I've got to keep up with my married friends is a huge mistake. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today.
That's right, Jordan Peterson.
And
absolutely right.
And so, because here's the thing, there are things that you can do as a single person that married folks can't do, and I would focus on those things, because there are some cool things.
Like sleep peacefully. I'm curious. Okay, let's make that list.
People can do that?
Yeah.
So, but I would, and if you say I am single but would like to be married someday, I would be very aggressive in my what do I need to do prior to marriage, and have that list I'd have that list on my refrigerator. I'd have it on my bathroom mirror. I'd have it sitting next to the toilet. I'd have it everywhere where
Which you could do if you're not married. I mean, you could decorate the bathroom however you want.
leave the seat up. You can do all that stuff.
That's the big mistake that I've seen, not to cut you off, is when you're single. I don't care if you're never planning to get married or whatever, but when you're single, there is a temptation to not think about the next life transition.
Yeah.
Whether that's getting married or whether that's retirement or whether that's whatever it is. We all go through transitions. We've done series about the life transitions you go through. And so I would encourage you right now, if you're single and you're listening to this, think ahead. What's the next life transition? And are you taking steps right now in your financial life to get ready for that?
Yeah, and if we're channeling JP, I would say pursue meaning, not happiness. And because that will make all of the difference. And if you say, what does that even mean? Come talk to a certified financial planner who can help you kind of slow down long enough. Because you are spending, if you don't have a financial planner, you're spending more time planning your vacations than you are planning your financial life statistically. So I would say come talk to someone who can help you slow down long enough to uncover and discover some of these things.
And of course, this is not an infomercial for Korhorn Financial Group. We can't serve everyone. So contact your certified financial planner. And at KFG, we have a team. We have a team of advisors, CFPs. So if you need any help or if you're listening and you know someone that is single, needs some help getting started, laying the right foundation, reach out to your CFP, whether that's us or whether that's just someone else that you know who's doing comprehensive financial planning. All right, I hope this series on Suddenly Single, the unique financial planning approach that you need to take here, was helpful. I was looking on YouTube for a vlog video. We're starting our vlog here, Your Next Wise Step, where it's basically one of us in front of a camera saying, hey, here's what's going on, here are the things you need to do. And we came across someone who's been doing this a long time. His name is Jeff Rose. He's another financial advisor, CFP. I think he's a good guy. I've met him once. And his latest video was about, the 7 financial advisors he wants to punch in the face. and he's got the boxing gloves on and everything. And I'm talking to Lindsay, who helps us with marketing. She's awesome. And I was like, I don't know. That might be a little too casual for us. And seriously, the guy's in a T-shirt and boxing gloves. He's like, saying some vulgar things. If I see these financial advisors on the street, I'm going to punch them in the face or worse. And it reminded me, Kevin came in and said he had a rant to share about some folks that he's met with recently who have had some other experiences with financial professionals. So Kevin, kind of share a little bit what
just
happened.
to tee it up, this is a professional couple in their early 30s. And he got great advice from a mentor of his who is in the same profession in his late 50s. And what did the old bull say to the young bull?
Tell us.
No, let's walk. No, he said, I wish I had done that when I was in my 30s.
Oh, that's the most common phrase we
Right.
hear in our office. Wish I would have started sooner.
Right.
Yeah.
So the 3 words to live by: coulda, woulda, and shoulda. But you don't know, right? So thankfully, his mentor is working with a certified financial planner after working with one that wasn't and suffering for it. So so this fella comes in with his wife, and they were talking about things and how we can help them and what their needs are. And they said, we're just trying to figure out, well, what should we do? What should we do? And I said, well, have you ever met with a financial advisor? And yes, we've met with a couple. I said, well, how was that experience? And they said, well, they kind of told us we didn't meet their minimums and to go away and build up money. And then once we had a certain amount of money, we could come back and get help from them. And I said, oh, those are folks that call themselves financial advisors, but really they're just investment sellers. Yeah. Whether they sell investments for a commission or they sell investments for a fee, they're just investment sellers. And if you look at a business model, that's a way more profitable model to run, where you say, hey, listen, someone comes in with a holistic problem and I'm only going to solve the piece of it that makes me the most money.
Right.
And it would be possible to become kind of jaded and cynical, and I refuse to do that. But that's one of the reasons why we're stratified as a firm.
Yeah.
We can help anyone, no matter where they are.
Well, it sounds like there are a couple that is
CF
high earning potential, right?
Right. CFP's doing comprehensive financial planning. We've got more coming up here on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group.
I knew we were
I know.
getting a little skinny on
I was
time.
getting sucked into the story there.
I know. Well, it is an amazing story because at the end, she said, "This exceeded my expectations." The problem is most folks go to that financial advisor and work with that financial advisor,
Sure.
and so they say, what's the difference?
That's how advisors work, I guess.
It's like the guy that had an axe, and he was a woodcutter, right? And he had an axe, and he was a woodcutter, and he went to the hardware store, and the guy said, "Hey, look, we got this thing called a chainsaw. You should use this to cut wood." So he buys a chainsaw, and he goes home, and he cuts wood, and the next day he cuts a little bit less, and the next day he cuts a little bit less, and the next day he's cutting even less. And so finally he just takes the chainsaw back to the hardware store, and he's like, "Hey, I'm cutting less wood with this thing than I used to cut with my axe." And the guy's like, "Well, let me see what the problem is." And the guy in the store starts up the chainsaw, and the woodcutter says, "What's that noise?"
Wow.
So there are a lot of people that have worked.
I thought you were going somewhere else.
Kevin grew up in Big Rapids.
Maybe I lived the first 18 years of my life in Big Rapids. I wouldn't say I necessarily grew up there.
Oh, good
So,
point.
so this is the thing, though. I mean, people will come into our office with a chainsaw that's never run and we'll start it up, and they'll say, "What's that noise?" We'll say, "This is how a certified financial planner works, and this is the body of work that you need done for you." And they say, "What's that noise?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But, financial advisors out there, like the ones that they first met with, they keep on perpetuating this sense that I don't go see a financial advisor until I have a bunch of money, right? Because there are financial advisors out there who they want you to have the money when you show up because they get paid to help you invest it.
Yeah.
They wanna
makes me
sell
wanna
you
throw my
something.
pen.
But, those are folks that have amazing potential if they can just get started right.
Yes.
Then they will achieve amazing things, and they need a coach to help
So are we
them.
going to talk about this at all in the next segment, or are we done?
We definitely need to get to questions.
Okay, so let's go to questions. So then I will just, for the benefit of the YouTubers, I said to them, this is the planning advice that you got from the investment guys. The investment guys said, max out your 401k, double up on your student loan payments, take your 30-year mortgage and turn it into a 5-year mortgage. Pay it off. And max out everything that you can. And they looked at me and they said, "Well, how did you know?" And I said, because that's what you tell someone if you don't do planning. Because planning is figuring out at what levels should these things be funded or paid off. And this 30-year-old was saying, hey, when I'm 40, I don't want to wake up when I'm 40 and have all my student loans gone and realize I should have had money over here to pursue a different opportunity. And so this is where we're saying, yep, you have to build that budget one layer at a time to get to the right answer, not just do as much as you can in this area. So,
All right. This first answer can be pretty short. Does anyone know? I think the gentleman is mistaken about how this works. Or
We're missing a word in that question.
nope, that's
Question
the
about
question.
using from
A qualified, which I'm assuming is qualified account.
It's-
Qualified.
it's from Anonymous.
It smells like an attorney wrote this question.
I'm saying that's not how it works.
What?
Pay for
that it's not. So the Pension Protection Act, I believe, allows you to move money from an annuity or life insurance to pay long-term care, and that distribution isn't taxable to pay for long-term care insurance. That withdrawal out of the life insurance or the annuity isn't taxable, but not a qualified plan. You can't take money out of your IRA to pay your long-term care premium and avoid tax on it. Right?
No.
I think that's what the question is. And then certainly for long-term care expenses, that's not tax-free either.
Okay, right, but is he talking about a qualified plan?
This is what was typed in.
This is the problem with our industry. There's a qualified plan, but there's a qualified policy. There's a tax-qualified long-term care policy and non-tax-qualified long-term care policy. So I say let's get into it, and we'll just.
Sure.
I mean, it's.
So my hope is we're hitting both of these questions.
Yeah, the risk is that this is going to be awfully technical and.
Yeah, I think we keep it surface. I don't think it works the way he's thinking it does.
I want to get really technical.
Starting the fourth segment, Land of the Plane. All right. Thanks for being with us today. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. My name is Mike Bernard. Here with me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. If you enjoy listening to podcasts, every episode of the Wise Money Show is on podcast wherever you listen, whether that's iTunes or Google Play or whatever. Just search the Wise Money Show and you'll find us there, every episode right there. I encourage you to subscribe to it, even rate it as well. Helps other people find us and find content about wise financial principles. Every episode's right there. Every episode's also on the YouTube channel as well. All right, we're transitioning into questions from fans of the show. We received a question from an anonymous listener a couple weeks ago, and here's what he sent in. I have a question about using funds from a qualified to pay for a long-term care expense, not a long-term care policy. Will it still be a tax-free event under the Pension Protection Act? Now, I've got to read into it a little bit to really decipher exactly what the question is here about using funds from a qualified to pay for a long-term care expense, not a long-term care policy, and whether that is tax-free under the Pension Protection Act.
I'd like to take a stab at that. So the problem with what we do and how we do it, we spend all day, every day explaining things to people that don't make any sense. So
enjoy doing it.
Yeah,
it's weird.
This is one of those areas that doesn't make any sense. And the question, there's a word left off that you could go either way. So there's a qualified plan. So when you think of a qualified plan, think of a tax qualified plan. So a retirement plan or an IRA or something along those lines. So if the question is, can I take money out of my qualified plan and have it be tax-free?
To pay for long-term care expenses.
Right. I'm going to say the answer to that is no, but this is where you want to do a consult. Mm-hmm. The reality is you'll likely be able to deduct that anyway on your Schedule A,
right.
Possibly.
Some portion of it, right.
Some portion of it if you're itemizing.
But that withdrawal, I don't believe, is immediately
That might actually
taxed.
be worth explaining, though, because that's a little bit more universal concept than pulling money out of a retirement plan and being able to write it off. When we talk about maybe being able to deduct it on your Schedule A, remember, Schedule A is a portion of your tax return where you're trying to build up an itemized list of expenses that the government will let you take a write-off for. Okay, one of them is your medical expenses. Now, the problem is the first 10% of your overall income, I'm going to call it, it's called your adjusted gross income, gets thrown out. So first 10% of your income that goes towards medical expenses, you don't get to write off, unfortunately. But if you spill over that threshold, now it may be helping you build to a larger tax write-off than what the government is offering to everyone on a standard deduction. So it's possible. Maybe you get some sort of a write-off when you're paying money to a nursing home, for example. a portion of the expense that you pay to the nursing home is considered medical expense. Other portion of it is your housing and your food, that sort of thing.
The other interesting thing, though, if the listener is saying from a qualified plan, as you're drawing that money out, that increases that overall income.
That's right.
Which makes that 10% threshold even a higher bar every time you.
Yep.
Yeah. So
take
when you
dollars
think
out.
what did the Pension Protection Act of 2006 do for me? It lets you pull money out of your life insurance or annuities tax free, and that's a different conversation that we want to have than we want to have on the radio.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I would say is there's also something called a tax qualified policy that can be eligible for a tax deduction of the benefits. So if it's a qualified long-term care insurance contract, the benefit that's paid is excluded from your income. Mm-hmm. And this gets way deep in the weeds. Mm-hmm. And so if you have a long-term care policy and you're saying, well, is mine tax qualified or not tax qualified? That'd be a good thing to know. It'd help you with how you plan.
Yep. And you'll want to make sure that you're getting the tax deduction for that premium if you're eligible for one. And then the last thing, taking a stab at this, if it's truly just asking, well, the Pension Protection Act, I believe, allows you to take money out of a life insurance or annuity to pay for your premium. Does it give you that same tax benefit if you're just paying the expenses? Not the way I read it.
Right.
Not the way I read it. I'm certainly not an expert in this act, but I believe it's the language is such that you've got to pay for a policy. That's what makes it tax exempt, not if you're just paying for expenses. But, the U.S. tax code is apparently, this is the only country I've ever lived in, the most complicated on the planet. Right?
Yeah.
And so there's exceptions to exceptions, and then, 3 exceptions to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've read parts of the Financial Confusion Act of 2006, and it is challenging to work your way through that.
All right. Speaking of challenging. All right. So Carrie's 46 from Granger. She's a fan of the show. Has our next question. What can I do to manage the cost of my auto insurance now that my daughter is getting her driver's license? I've got one.
Don't.
Uber.
That's right.
Uber.
Bus pass, bicycle. How about that one?
Uber, yes. Or make sure she's got friends with vehicles. And next to our next door neighbor, great folks, son is a senior at Penn on the football team. And we come home after softball practice last night, and there are just cars flooding the street. Apparently he had some sort of after-practice meeting at his house or whatever. It wasn't a party or whatever. It was 7 o'clock or something. And I'm not kidding. There was every one of these kids drove separately. And that is not how you would never detect. When I was in high school, you'd never detect if there were a bunch of people there because there'd only be one car. We'd all fit. But there were so many cars, and I'm not kidding. There's ones that had duct tape on them, and there were Mercedes right next to each other for these kids. So anyway, we're joking a little bit, but what can you do? Good student discount.
Yep.
That one's in your child's control. Good student discount.
There are defensive driving courses that they can take that help give maybe a 5% discount or something like that off of the premiums. Mm-hmm. Those are the proactive things that you're just really kind of demonstrating to the insurance company that your son or daughter is more responsible than their peers, right? And that can help shave a little bit off here and there.
Yeah, and another thing that you can do that's in your control is you can go and sit down with your insurance agent and ask them, what kind of car should I buy that would give me the best rates if I'm driving it? I did that actually when I was, 23 or 24, and I went in and met with Don Som, and I said, hey, what kind of car should I get? And he gave me a short list of cars that are really positive as far as the insurance costs, and I ended up with a 2-door Volkswagen Fox station wagon.
That's actually maybe a good segue into a comment that I was going to make as well, that you need to make sure that you have the right insurance carrier. Yes. So when you do go in and you speak to your insurance agent, my hope is that they are an independent agent who can help shop around, because the right carrier for you and your husband, let's say, may be a different carrier as soon as you start introducing youthful drivers. every insurance company has a certain demographic that they want to be most competitive in. And there are some carriers that are more competitive with youthful drivers than others. But also, some of those carriers have a policy that would say, it doesn't matter which car the son or daughter is driving, we're going to rate the most youthful driver to the most expensive car, just in case they happen to borrow the car keys and go wreck that Mercedes.
Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, exactly.
I was thinking of a couple other things. Number one, we talked about defensive driving course. What about the whole idea of just defensive driving?
Yeah.
Right? Hey, son or daughter, if you're getting a ticket, that's on you. If we see an increase from the insurance because you got a ticket or whatever, that's on you. Right?
That's the deal I have with my kids. I'm paying the insurance until you get a ticket, and then you're paying it.
And then the second, so good old defensive driving, I think that's a good idea. And then the second is, we talked about this before. We had insurance specialist Alicia Boehner on the program a few weeks ago, and we were talking about this. And the old thing that you can plug into your dash, I don't know what it is, where it sort of monitors your driving for a few weeks and then gives you a discount based off of that. I would do that with the kids. I would do that when you've got someone turning driving age. So great question, Carrie. Appreciate it. Hopefully that was helpful. All right, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks for being with us. On behalf of Kevin Korhorn, Josh Gregory, all of us at KFG, we'll see you next time for the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group.
Securities offered through Silver Oak Securities, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through KFG Wealth Management, LLC. Doing business as Korhorn Financial Group. KFG Wealth Management, LLC and Silver Oak Securities Incorporated companies are unaffiliated.